Washington is currently issuing a direct warning to Oman. It's no longer a matter of interpretation. They've simply stated that the neutrality that protected Oman for years could be entering its most critical moment. The United States has reportedly threatened sanctions, but also military action. If Oman enters into this collaboration with Iran and the toll system is implemented in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran would not only be attacked by the United States, but Oman would also be directly involved in the conflict, not only with the United States, but probably with the Gulf countries as well. When it seemed like a settlement was coming, a ceasefire, at the same time, there are situations in which Oman would be seeking to obtain resources to get money from the ships passing through the area. According to reports cited by the Wall Street Journal, Washington would have interpreted this possibility as having given up. In other words, they interpret that Oman is abandoning its neutrality and would be completely on Iran's side. The level of tension escalated to such a degree that there have been reports about warnings that included the possibility of military actions against Oman, helping to consolidate the system that Iran wants to promote. In other words, Oman would be leaning completely towards Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the key points, and it's practically where the conflict is focusing. They got themselves into a problem where now the situation would end up worse than it was before. Washington maintains that right now it is considering not only ensuring free passage, but also that there would be military actions against Oman if this does not happen. Oman publicly denies that they intend to participate in a toll system with Iran. But apparently, intelligence officials claim that things are not as they are being reported. On Oman's side, the Wall Street Journal points out that pressure is mounting for Oman to abandon its neutrality. In other words, Iran is increasing the pressure on Oman to choose either Iran or the United States. But at this moment, they will have to make a decision. Oman can no longer be a neutral country. It is either against Iran or in favor of Iran. Basically, the consequence is that this crisis could get worse than we think. And while these are just pieces of the puzzle, oil prices have shot up again. It seems like this doesn't want to stop. And even though supposedly everything is going well, and they're already talking about a ceasefire. Right now, as you can see, oil is at $98.81. Brent crude, $98.81, getting very close to $100. If not even with a coordinated public ceasefire, in which even Israel would stop attacking Lebanon, I mean, all the conditions are perfect for a ceasefire. And even so, the oil traders know that something is happening. They know something strange is going on. This happening. And apparently, the Iranians don't want to negotiate and are putting pressure with Lebanon, telling them when to attack Israel or when not to, right? Towards Oman, when to charge a toll, or which side Oman has to be on from now on. If this happens, as it's being reported and the price of oil is indicating, that's where it's headed. And in the end, international conflicts are always interesting, maybe from a historical point of view. But they're much more interesting when global events are happening that have a direct effect on our homes. All of you and I have experienced the effects of this war. How? Well, when you go and buy a kilo of tomatoes that's much more expensive, and with the excuse of rising gas prices, they start raising the prices of basic goods. What? Governments don't like to admit what's happening. But in the end, we're the ones who pay, right? When you go to the supermarket, you really notice that things have been getting more expensive globally. But we also need to think about this. When these price increases happen, unfortunately, sometimes the price does go down a little, but it doesn't go back to what it was. It stays a bit higher. It's inflation caused by a war that's thousands of kilometers away. But they're ideal excuses to raise prices, to bump up the price of everything. And that's what's happening now. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other players in the region are already reacting. The most important consequence is that this crisis won't be limited. Look, the situation is at such a level that it's not just about the drop in oil, but also a value that had been holding steady. That had been supporting the price has completely collapsed. Just look at Bitcoin's price. It's a collapse that hits the crypto world really hard, because when Bitcoin falls, well, it falls. Of course, people say it's a buying opportunity. Well, yes, it's obviously a buying opportunity too, but just look at the drop. Look, yesterday I was really surprised by this drop. And I said, hey, what a tremendous drop. Because these are drops that come in steps, right? A drop, then another, and another yesterday. But the one that really surprised me was this one. This is a price that goes beyond. Look, this was the possible floor. This yellow line. Yes, this yellow line, if it's surpassed, it's going to fall much more than expected. And clearly what's happening right now with Bitcoin is that there are strong sell-offs. Big whales. They're getting out of Bitcoin. It's a topic that should be analyzed, because many times it's those drops that make these whales come back later. They sell more Bitcoin, let's say at 70 or 80, right? But when it's that massive, they wait for the price to drop and buy again, right? And a lot of people, let's say small holders, they just get left out, right? And the whales keep getting bigger each time. Well, more than this value. But anyway, that's a separate issue. What's actually causing a global effect on prices is coming back. And in the worst way, because if it were coming back due to missile strikes or attacks, you could say, well, at least we know it's because of a long-standing enmity between Iran, the United States, and Israel. You'd say, okay, I get it's due to that situation. I understand that's where the hostility comes from. But here, the problem is that now this price increase is coming from a different factor called Oman, right? So that's the worrying part, because it's a factor that wasn't considered when everyone was already, so to speak, shaking hands, like everyone was calming down. Well, Oman says, I want a peace too, although they haven't officially said this. These are so far intelligence leaks from the United States government, reported by outlets like the Wall Street Journal, which have revealed this situation. If it weren't for the fact that oil is also going up, this tells us that something is happening, that something strange is going on in the Middle East, and that probably the Oman factor is the most serious so far, especially because of the warnings from the United States, right? Now, it's not just that issue, right? Look at what's happening with this matter. The Pentagon has reportedly closed the press office to journalists, declaring it a classified area. So much information has leaked from the Pentagon that these measures add to a series of restrictions that they say are closer to censorship than anything else. Reporters from the New York Times and other outlets, let's say some of the most traditional in the United States, currently have open lawsuits and legal actions to get access to the space, because now the new rules that have been put in place at the Pentagon ensure that they completely affect independent coverage and the public's right to be informed. The Department of Defense has issued a report. A report in which it states that the Pentagon press office is no longer accessible to journalists after being reclassified as a sensitive information area. Well, basically it means they are not going to provide information, and everything that happens or is questioned inside the Pentagon will not be disclosed. It will remain only inside the Pentagon, and before it was an open space, not the entire Pentagon, but the press area for asking questions. Now that's not the case, right? Doing research or anything else isn't possible now. The decision adds to a series of measures that have increasingly limited press work in the United States, especially in the military complex, since it is in constant legal disputes and public confrontation between the media and the federal government. Meanwhile, just before I move on to what's happening with the warning from the UN, which I find very interesting. Let me tell you that Gustavo Petro is sending a very strong message against the elections that took place this past weekend. There is a tremendous confrontation in which some even claim that this is increasingly resembling an attempted coup or a self-coup within Colombia. I don't know if it's at that level, but at least it's drawing attention. The political confrontation in Colombia is reaching a point where they're not even recognizing the results. Petro is denouncing an alleged fraud. The most curious and interesting thing is that he's denouncing it now that he sees the votes didn't favor his candidate, right? That really catches my attention, right? President Petro stated that he has proven grounds for a significant and possible fraud, and he says he could provide the information to the competent authorities. No, it's not that he has to hand over the evidence to see if the evidence really shows something similar to what he's saying. Now, various analysts have already described this situation as serious because clearly it's the fact of the vote not going his way that keeps him upset, even to the point of not recognizing the results at all. It's tremendous. So let's move on to other important matters. Thank you. The United Nations has issued a global warning and says that we need to prepare ourselves. We have already given you details about what the WMO has said, what NOAA has said, and various universities from England, the United States, and many other countries. Right here, UNAM also issued its warning, as did Ecuador, Peru, and various other countries that have been releasing their own alerts about what the El Niño phenomenon will be like, or now called Super Niño because of its strength. This time, it was the UN's turn to issue a warning. Thanks to the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, which has given a warning that takes effect from now on. An alert in which they say, well, the climate will be at its most dangerous phase in 2026 starting from now. According to what they warn, the planet is experiencing the return of the El Niño climate phenomenon. But unfortunately, it's not just El Niño, it's a super El Niño. Official forecasts say that there is an 80 to 90% chance that the El Niño phenomenon will begin starting this summer. At the latest, if it gets delayed, if we're a bit lucky, so to speak, and the phenomenon is delayed, it would be pushed back until September. But I've already brought you several versions of this. There are analysts who claim that we're practically already in El Niño based on the characteristics we're experiencing. The Pacific is warming up. Although meteorologists, let's say, there still isn't a consensus that the phenomenon has already started. There is still data missing to be able to determine it. They believe climate models now show the phenomenon will happen, not that it won't. And what they are asking, what the UN is asking the population, and it's an issue that affects all of us, is that we prepare ourselves and be ready for how the phenomenon is going to unfold. If you happen to be in winter, if you happen to be in a rainy area, if you happen to be in areas with heat waves, then you need to know what the indicators are, what the signs are, for example, that you're experiencing a heat wave or a heat stroke, for example. Or if you live in landslide areas, right? The Secretary General of the UN spoke about the issue. Antonio Guterres issued a warning that has been one of the strongest I've seen from him this year, despite all the issues going on. Honestly, he hasn't appeared much. And this time, what catches my attention is that he comes out to ask the world to treat the situation as an emergency, an urgent climate alert. He says, nations should consider that El Niño amplifies the effects of extreme weather being experienced at this time. So if we already experience extreme weather every year, this year in particular is going to be tougher, especially once the El Niño phenomenon begins, which would be sometime in the next few weeks to September, when the El Niño phenomenon is just starting, right? If it gets delayed, we'll have a complicated summer, but not as bad. If it comes early, then this summer is going to be very complicated for many countries that are on the summer side. And those who are on the winter side, well, you already know what to expect. In some areas, it's very likely there will be drought, and in other areas, too much rain. whatever phenomenon happens or whichever one affects you, lane. The one that hits is going to be, let's say, tougher than usual. In their forecast, they say that in the coming months, we will see how the chances of exceptionally high temperatures increase around the planet. In other words, we are going to experience record temperatures, local records. Let's say if your city had a record of 27 degrees Celsius, then that record will possibly be surpassed this year. In 2024, many temperature records were broken, and right now we are at the same level as we are in a very hot moment on the planet in general. What is expected is that this will be the hottest year in history, and that the next 5 years will be like this, and then there will be a pause cycle, maybe 1 or 2 years. Let's hope so. But look, analysts say that even this phenomenon could extend until 2027, meaning it starts in 2026, but that it could also set new records in 2027. This is very interesting, especially because, look, it's released by... Among the statements are the WMO, the UN, NOAA itself, NOAA here in Mexico, and even UNAM has made its own comment on the matter. And those of us who have been following this topic for years, we've seen how the patterns have been getting worse, right? This year, we had a very, very unusual year in which there has been much more water than normal, right? It's said that in the United States, Mexico, and other countries, that drought they were experiencing, which was very severe, has been broken. It's not that it's been completely resolved, but let's say the problem is less severe. But what catches my attention is what happened, for example, yesterday in Mexico City with these really intense storms, which obviously was caused by this phenomenon, right? I mean, the phenomenon we've been talking about. There are more images that have been coming out where you can see how, well, what's it called? The Metro Water Monitor show. Let's see if we can show it here in the image. But it's this one. Look, I mean, the amount of hail that fell on the guy who's over there in the car, on top of the car because it's flooded. And on top of that, it's flooded with hail, right? I mean, it's really intense. And, well, there are a lot of images on social media that have been appearing and that show the following. I mean, if we look at the map, we can see the rainfall accumulation. Look, that's today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. In 3 days, the amount of water, how it keeps spreading and accumulating in 5 days and in a week, just in 1 week. That's the amount of water we're going to get. If we go into the following week, that's already something exaggerated. It's a huge amount of water. So, if it's been raining, well, expect a lot more rain. And look, for those who don't know us, here's where we are. We are here in this area of Monterrey, broadcasting from Monterrey, which is not the area with the most rain right now in this whole northern region of North America. No. And even so, I want you to see what the forecast is for us. And this is when it's calm. No, but look, let me see if I can put it here on the screen. But look, there it is. Look, that's the forecast. We're at 32 degrees right now, but the forecast is that it's going to rain every day. There we can see it clearly. It's going to be raining every day, at least with thunderstorms. It doesn't have to be all day, every hour. Obviously not. But just imagine if we're going to be experiencing it like this, how will people in other regions be experiencing it? Where you can see how the accumulation is excessive, right? For some areas, really. Don't let your guard down. We've already experienced many phenomena since we started broadcasting. We've had to report on many weather events. In fact, several times, especially one in particular. We even went viral in one of the videos, not on YouTube, but on WhatsApp. Remember, someone uploaded the video there after downloading it, and suddenly my relatives tell me, hey, you're making the rounds in a viral video of a warning you gave about a weather phenomenon. And, well, we even appeared on TV like meteorologists denying it. No, they had nothing to deny about me. Because, well, in any case, I'm not a meteorologist. What I do is update the information. What I do is bring the best meteorological information in the world. And not just one, but the best ones, I put them together and we bring them here. And that's exactly what I said it was going to do. Not me, I insist. But the meteorologists and the AIs and algorithms in the climate field got it exactly right with what I was talking about. Shutting up a bunch of people who, I don't know, maybe just want to look cool. Or, I don't know. Right. Whatever orders their bosses give them, like, no, but I don't know, so that people don't get worried. Well, no, I mean, it's not about worrying or not. It's simply about seeing reality. If reality tells you that this problem is coming, then accept it, see it, and act accordingly, right? But no, you're not going to stay quiet just so people don't worry. Well, no, obviously not, right? I mean, if the problem is coming, then you have to see it, right? And this is a problem. I mean, it's rare to see something like this. At this level, it's rare. Yeah, if a hurricane came, I wouldn't be that surprised. But no, there's not a, well, there's still a chance of a hurricane around here. In fact, this one here, the one about excessive rain, is still much more likely. I mean, that's huge. 500 millimeters. I mean, I'm talking about the coast out at sea in the Pacific. So that's a lot of water. And this is possibly the phenomenon that's moving around here. The one we saw yesterday. It's not this one, but this one over here. There's a chance that a hurricane could form, but it would just brush by. At least up until now, it hasn't turned toward Mexico. Instead, it would just brush past us and obviously cause even more rain. The phenomenon isn't expected to be large. The chances are still at 40% up until now, although this could change as well. A hurricane could form in the next 7 days. That's the probability given by NOAA itself, right? Because you see, I didn't say it. NOAA says it, right? And here we'll keep you updated. And that we'll keep updating you on what happens. And you just help me out and let me know how the weather is in your regions. If you live in Argentina or Chile, it helps me confirm things. For example, Pepe. People here say it's good, there's no heat or whatever. That's good, and I study it too. And well, we help each other out here. We help each other by seeing what the most serious problems are regarding climate issues or whatever the topic may be, right? The thing is, our job is to alert and warn when a problem is coming and to know about it, right? Just to understand it, right? That's the point, right? To understand these situations and know what needs to be done. That's why I found it very interesting that the UN is now coming out to say what we've been saying for a few weeks, right? Which is, hey, be careful. Let's all start preparing for these phenomena, right? Today, I travel a lot on the highway, and that's good. You travel a lot on the highway and there are risks of landslides, so you have to stay informed about when there are storms, when not to go out. I mean, that's what preparation is about. That's what I mean by preparation. But today there are hours when it's extremely hot. And if one day you make a mistake and don't bring your cap when you go out to walk, to run, whatever, one day you don't bring your cap, and speaking from experience, that's the day you could get heat stroke, right? I've already experienced it twice. And one time was because I forgot my cap. And another time because I lost it at work. It was really windy. It flew away. I couldn't get it back and I didn't have a spare one, right? And they were two. Like 8 or 9 hours of nothing but sun, non-stop, with absolutely no shade because of the kind of filming we were doing. There were no breaks. There was no way. There was no shade either. There was nothing. So it was tough, but a cap can save your life. I mean, it really saves you. So yeah, both nights, almost a year apart, but it feels really rough. It feels really rough. You know, you feel it a little, just a bit, and yeah. I was going to go to the hospital. No, I didn't go to the hospital just because I recovered the next day, but the night was really tough. I mean, with shivering and all sorts of things, a lot of stuff. But, well, it was just part of the whole thing, right? So, yeah, just pay attention to. I'm not sure if people from other states or countries without that kind of heat have experienced this. If you've experienced that kind of heat, we're kind of used to it and we more or less know what to do and we notice it really quickly. The other day, this Sunday, I happened to be doing a bit of gardening and I had been on the hill that day. I mean, we had gone hiking on the hill. So I was already pretty sunburned, and I also went without a cap, but it was about 2 hours, right? And that's it, right? And then in the afternoon, I went out to do some gardening here outside, just a little bit while we were switching from one broadcast to another to clear my head a bit from the news, and I was there. Like another 2 hours, but being outside without a cap again, I noticed it's a certain kind of headache that's different from a normal one. And I immediately left. I went to the shade, hydrated myself, drank a mineral water with a bunch of ice and lemon. I put on my cap, and the headache didn't last even 5 minutes. Because, well, you react, right? I mean, and of course, you're kind of in a bad mood, right? Right? You answer back more, not that you're really, really upset. But wait. I mean, this isn't normal, right? So you put on your cap, and I mean, but you have to pay attention to the signs. That's what I'm getting at, right? I mean, you start to get a little moody. You get a headache. Obviously, if you're out in the sun a lot. Of course, the pain hits you, right? Let's move on to other matters. Check out what's happening. Let's see. According to reports, and this is a detail that will need to be confirmed, but there are attacks in Tebnin in southern Lebanon. The images are already starting to come out. If this is true, as they say here, forget about the ceasefire. Forget about what the other majors said. And in the end, Israel said yes. But in the end, they didn't say when. And so the attacks would be continuing. Let's just wait for more details, because right now these images are just starting to come out. There were reports of explosions earlier this morning, right? And there are even some images coming out, so it seems like the attacks are happening in one area. But if this is happening, there will probably be a response. So you let it go. And you know what I mean, right? This never-ending story, this issue doesn't seem like it's going to stop. You know, kun. So be careful with that issue. This is another reason why the price of oil is probably rising and why there's a huge drop in BTC, in Bit. I didn't even check the S&P 500, but I guess. No, look, not that one. The S&P 500, it's unstoppable. It's impressive, honestly. I've seen all kinds of theories, you know. And at this point, it's one of those times where I don't even know what to believe anymore when it comes to finance, because it's just crazy. Look at this. Or, well, this goes a bit beyond logic. And the so-called experts are like this, right? The finance experts. Well, it shows they're not that much of they have too many different theories. And as you look at the reports day by day, you keep updating yourself to have several perspectives. And you realize that you say no. I mean, sure, they might know a lot of things, maybe about many topics. But suddenly there are things that happen in the markets that not even they know about, right? I mean, because in the end, for you to keep up, let's think about this. That's why this topic of finance is so interesting, because you realize that something really big is moving inside the United States and around the world. Something really big is happening right now, because it's not logical. Look, why do people invest? Why do all these stock buyers and all this stuff invest? What for? To make money. I mean, it's not just because they're nice people, right? I mean, it's to make money. That's the reality, right? So, if they're investing to make money, who in their right mind would buy something that's excessively expensive? That's at the most expensive point in history. If you want to make money, well, that doesn't make much sense, right? Normally, at this point, the price should drop like it did with gold, no matter how safe gold is or whatever. I mean, what happened with gold? It's been dropping and dropping because it had been hitting record highs over and over again. And suddenly, they said, well, that's it. The historical price is over. And it keeps going down and down and down and down and down, and it keeps dropping just like silver and all that. But why is the S&P 500 a value that they already say is in a bubble? It's no longer a good investment and whatever. So why does it keep going up then? I mean, let's think about the fact that this is the highest value in its history, that it's excessively expensive, that if you want to invest, you say, well, yes, fine, but I'm going to wait for the price to go down, right? That's what you would normally do with an investment. Let's wait for the price to go down because right now it's very high. I don't know what. Nothing. I mean, they keep buying and buying and buying. There has to be one at this point. Imagine all those who have invested since who knows what year, right? Investors seeing the high price might say, I'll sell now, right? Many are selling. I mean, a lot of people are selling and they say, I'll just take my profit now. I've been in here for years. I take out my profit and, well, I walk away with some money and invest it in other things, right? Many people leave by choice. What does a higher price mean? It means a lot of people are buying. Just like people sell, there are more people buying and more people. So either it creates a much bigger bubble and the crash is going to be worse, or they're seeing something that makes them say that. The only thing that's a safe investment right now is this, the S&P 500. Why? Well, nothing else. I mean, not the NASDAQ or anything else. I mean, just check out how the NASDAQ is doing, which is all the tech companies, all the technology companies, right? I mean, check out how it is. I mean, it's okay. It's not doing super bad, but it's had drops. And I mean, no, it's not. But the S&P is something exaggerated. So it's a topic that I insist has nothing to do with it. Oh, it's more about logic. I insist. Look at something else. They're obviously seeing something that we're not seeing. Maybe instability. Maybe they're just not trusting anything. They're not trusting the dollar. They're not trusting gold. How is gold doing right now? There's the drop. I mean, from the highest peak that gold reached in February since the war started, which was February 26th. That's the highest peak. So around here, the war started on February 28th. From then on, the gold that you mentioned. Hey, but isn't gold supposed to go up during wars? Well, yes, but it had already gone up a lot because of what had happened before. And it was coming from a big increase. So, do you remember? We've been reporting on the topic of gold here for years, right? So, well, the nice thing, the interesting thing about knowing this is just at least observing it. It's not that much, not to invest, but to observe that unusual things are happening, right? And to say, well, why is this happening, right? And usually it gives us an answer very quickly. This time, it's the first time I see that there isn't a consensus answer. There's always a consensus. That is, look, 80% of analysts are saying it's for this reason. I mean, well, there's a consensus that it's because of the war. I mean, that, yes, there's no doubt about that. But what there's no consensus on is which part of the war. I mean, whether it's because of the Strait of Hormuz, whether it's because the war is going to spread and intensify, whether it's because they think there will be instability in the Gulf countries. I mean, which part of that war is causing them the most nervousness? Because right now, in theory, things should be calming down. The market should be recovering, except for the S&P, which has gone up too much, I think. But why? Why does Bitcoin drop like that? Why doesn't the NASDAQ go up? Why does oil keep going up? If supposedly yesterday was the big fix, everything should be calm now. But obviously that's not the case. I mean, not even with the World Cup, right? But anyway, let's go to the comments. How have you been, Adrian Gilbert? Hello. Maduro, how have you been? Eliseo, greetings. Greetings to everyone joining us. Hello, but there it is. How have you been? I hope you're well. What I'm hearing today, Tuesday, is that something is going to be announced tonight. Supposedly. Right? They always are. It's important, at least on this topic, because they say it'll be very disruptive. And they're announcing something today. Supposedly, it's related to what's happening in the Middle East. Let's see if that's the case. Pepe says that during Biden's times, the state promoted the Magnificent Seven, says Gazduro. During Biden's time, it was at all-time highs the entire time. Also in the S&P 500 during Trump's time as well. So that means it hasn't mattered, at least for the big ones, right? That part hasn't mattered that much.
Yeah.
This one. Yes. Yes. Well, politics in the 500 most important companies, you talk about the Magnificent Seven, which also did quite well at the time during Biden's era. I don't remember how the oil situation was during all of Biden's term, but you just have to check the chart. It's very easy. I mean, really, it's just about looking at the years he was in office. But that's how it seems to me. I have the feeling that there wasn't that much fuss, right? There were increases. Anyway, when the drops happened, people actually remember the drop more. They remember when oil hit zero. When oil, I don't know if you remember that. I remember we talked with Marius Amusis. You're realizing what's happening with oil during the pandemic. Do you remember it hit zero? Why did that happen? Because it was crazy. In fact, I don't remember if it was just zero or if it even went below zero. I mean, yeah, into negative territory. Why? Because it cost money to store the barrels. They weren't using them because there was a global paralysis and suddenly a massive drop in oil prices, right? Some people probably took advantage of that to buy cheaply and build reserves. There were definitely countries that did this. I'm surprised right now by China's reserves, Japan's reserves, Taiwan's reserves. I mean, there are countries with strong reserves. And I mean, when did they do it, right? I mean, but well, good for them, right? It's a shame that not everyone has those reserves. I mean, those are reserves that are expensive to build and maintain. I mean, there's a cost just to having them sit there. And developing countries, well, they just can't afford that. That's why right now the problem in Pakistan is that it's collapsing. Pakistan is one of those countries that are on the verge of total collapse. They have a very serious problem, and it's a nuclear country. The only nuclear Muslim country in the world, and it's on the verge of collapse, right? It's an extremely big crisis. That's why everyone is kind of trying to help Pakistan. Honestly, I mean, it's like it can't collapse with the IMF, the United States, and China all helping. I mean, all the big players are helping Pakistan, hoping it doesn't collapse. Basically, radical groups within Pakistan have grown too much. That's a huge issue there. He says the markets remain extremely sensitive to any diplomatic progress or breakdown. He says, shout out to Jalal. Greetings, Jalal. We'll watch that closely. Yes, it's a buying opportunity, but not a shout out to Jalal. Right now, what I can say is that some people I know in this field, when there are big drops, it's very likely that it could fall even more. So what they do is you don't just buy the dip like that, but instead you say, well, if I had, let's say, I won't invest $1,000. Maybe I'll start with 200 and see if it drops, then add another 200 and keep going like that. And you take advantage of the dip a little bit and you know that it's already starting to go up again. I'll buy another 200 to check if the rise is real, since sometimes it doesn't last after 2 or 3 weeks, it drops again. So they split it up. Or that investment, they split it into several parts. So suddenly you have several purchases at different prices. And then after a few months, maybe years, they might recover. But you made a really good purchase, right? Thinking long term, right? Probably not. Greetings to Adrian. Just like Pepe likes to bring up, it's been a while since he brought up an idea. You know, I haven't had one. It's also about time, about dedicating some time to it. And no, I haven't really gotten back into it, right? But I already made my plan. Super. That's it. Well, I'll talk about it more later so I don't drag it out. I'll talk about it once I get started, because it does require, creating a plan, basically one that's sustainable, so I don't, let's say, neglect what I'm doing here, right? So I'll tell you later to see if you're interested. To get to know him, right? He says, greetings, GRP, GLM, deep to deep. He says, talk, money, theft, envy, and tier. Sorry, you're talking about assets, right? XRP, XLM, Ondo or not? Which ones to wash? I don't remember. Which is money, theft, envy, Palantir. Which platform do you use? Whichever one you like. I haven't really done anything except crypto. I haven't gotten into others, right? The ones that use other types of assets, right? It says, awesome. How have you been? Greetings from Gasduro. How are you, Adrian? Pull up the screen. Eliseo Beto Barba. How are you? Is the baby there? It says there. Whenever you can, please. If you can get more information about the weather in Mexico City. All right. How about if we do it at night? Well, you know what? I'm going to try in the afternoon to do a special about that, right? About what's happening and what's coming for Mexico City. Yesterday, we made a comment on the live stream for the next 15 days. I'll report it later because by the afternoon, the latest update from the National Meteorology System of Mexico will be out. And it's really cool. It's very up to date. So we'll see how it goes with that one along with Windy. No, we already talked about it. Yeah, I think so. Greetings, Beto Barba. This one says no. This one says yes. Now, the rain is really coming. It's going to get intense. I think here, I mean, I haven't been here for more than a year, but I don't think this area floods. We're literally almost at the Cerro de la Silla. So it's kind of elevated here. But I imagine if runoff comes down from other areas, I mean, it could be pretty strong. You have to be on alert for that. And then I'll ask someone I know around here, you know, just to see what they say. All right, well, I'll see you in a little while. Take care. Have a great afternoon. Hello. We'll keep chatting. Greetings from Adrian Eliseo to everyone watching live. If you're watching the replay, leave a comment. See you soon.